loaded data into the system, as we talked about it, if it fails some of the business rules, and there are just all kinds of business rules for every AQS transaction. As you know, AQS is designed to enforce our monitoring regulations, which are themselves complicated. So, for example, if you enter, say, you have a tribal ozone monitor, there's various things that could fail on, right? It could fail on that you didn't use the right tribal code. It could fail on that you entered the tribal code and the site ID and the monitor and the POC, and one of those pieces of information was wrong. It could fail that the method code is wrong. It could fail that it's out of the ozone monitoring season. It could fail on that the value for the sample is outside a bound. If there's a limit on it. It could fail if it's supposed to be in parts per million and you entered it in parts per billion. Sometimes those unit conversions can get converted, but sometimes the system will be like, I'm sorry, that's not valid. So in any way, there are many ways to have your transaction rejected. So we're going to focus on that part of it really quickly. And so if we go to the next slide, so this is where the batch form comes back, and you can see here's an example. If you go to, I think the next, yeah. So here's an example, and I'll direct you to the third line here, which is, this is one where it was successfully finally posted, right? Because you have 939 records loaded and 939 posted. I don't know why it says the 12 there, because those would have. And so what you want to do is, as you go through and you correct errors, as we'll talk about, you eventually want to get to the place where the records posted at the far right is equal to the records loaded at the far left, and that will let you know that every file has, or actually, I'm sorry, you want to get the records posted next to the records in file at the far left. And so in this case, we had 951 records, 939 of them got loaded, and 939 of them got posted, but there's still 12 records that just, for whatever reason, have failed. And so how do we identify those? So let's go to the next slide. And if I'm not going to read through all the fields on the batch form, I would encourage you, since you guys are getting emailed these handouts, we're running out of time. This will tell you what each of those files mean specifically. So, but it's important to note the file name there. And so let's go to the next slide right quick. Batch form notes. So each row shows the process of a single file. Blank columns mean that it hasn't run yet. The last thing I will also say, these are just the general rules for the batch form. The one thing I will say, when we get to the correct forms, you can load transactions via batch. If you also just have one or two transactions you want to enter, you can enter them directly into a correct form. These are new transactions, and then the system will make a file that you can then post via the batch form. And the way you can tell those is those files on the batch form will always begin with the word online. And it's just another facility, right? If you got 2 or 3 transactions and you don't want to go to all the trouble of putting them into a file and uploading them via NSC, you can enter them directly into a correct form, and then they will load and post just as if you loaded them via the ENSC. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the other thing the batch form has, so if you go to the first tab, the process by file tab, there's one line for each file. If you go to the process history, it will show you each step that file has gone through. So you can see in this example, the raw data load file that I loaded, it worked, then it errored out, then it errored out, probably in that case, because I tried to reload a file that had the same data in it. And so that's just, so if you want to see the history of it, also we talked about the reports that come up. The key report you want to deal with here is the load summary and errors report. If you're on the process by file, that first tab, you can click on that and it will show you the load report, the latest load report for a given file. And then on this tab, the history tab, you can either look at those reports for each step, or you can rerun it. You can actually rerun the load summary and errors report, and it will show you what the status of that file is now and how many errors are in it right at the second. So let's go to the next tab. Okay, so now we're gonna have an overview video of the batch form. So.
Understanding the AQS batch form. After logging into AQS, select Batch from the menu bar. The Process by File tab shows a summary of all of the processing that has been performed by AQS for a submitted file. This tab has 5 main areas. The History and Status area shows a list of files that have been submitted and the most recent action performed. Each row is an individual file. The submission date indicates the original date and time the file was staged to AQS. File name is the name of the file. User name. This is the name of the last user in the agency who initiated a processing step for this file. Records in file is the total number of transactions in the file. Date is the last time an action was performed on this file. Process status is the most recent process initiated for this file and the status of that process. Processes can be stage, load, critical review and statistical test, or post. The Load Processing Results Summary area provides a summary of what happened to each record in the file during the load process. Recs loaded is the total number of records that have been successfully loaded into AQS. Recs failing to load is the number of records that could not be loaded into AQS due to some kind of error. Stat.cr finding count is the number of records that raised concerns during the statistical and critical review process. The Post-Processing Results Summary area provides a summary of the file with respect to the post process. Records to post is the total number of raw data records from the file that need to be posted. Skipped monitors is the number of monitors for which the posting of data was skipped during the process. Records posted is the number of records for which post-processing completed successfully. Process control is where results can be reviewed and additional processes performed on files. The process control area allows the user to review results of earlier processed files and perform additional processing. The process control area only acts on the file that is highlighted on the top part of the form. Process flow is a reminder of how AQS processes the file. For further detail on this, watch the training video, Understanding Batch Submissions. You should now have an understanding of the AQS batch form. Thank you for watching.